My husband left me. No, scratch that. He dumped me and our two kids on the side of a deserted road in the middle of a storm. And for what? To go back to my best friend. It still sounds too cruel to be real, too surreal to belong to my life. I could almost convince myself it was just a nightmare, except the cold rain soaking through my clothes, the sound of my children crying, and the red glow of his taillights disappearing into the storm told me otherwise. I wasn't dreaming, this was real, and I had never felt more awake. The night had been normal, or at least I thought it was. We had just spent a long weekend at a lakeside cabin, one last peaceful getaway before I was too far along in my pregnancy to travel. My husband, Dan, had suggested it, saying we needed a break before the baby came. He was the perfect husband, planning the whole trip, packing the car, even surprising me with my favorite snacks. I thought it was sweet. I thought he was just trying to be supportive, knowing my father was dying, knowing how much stress I'd been under. I thought he loved me, but I was wrong. The rain had just started when we got back on the highway, the rhythmic sound of droplets tapping against the windshield as Dan drove. The kids were asleep in the back, their soft breaths filling the quiet space between us. I was exhausted, staring out the window at the blur of headlights in the distance. Then his phone buzzed. At first I barely noticed, then it buzzed again and again. I glanced down instinctively, just for a second, just long enough to see the name Madison light up on the screen. My best friend. A strange feeling crept up my spine, a tightness forming in my chest. I shouldn't have looked. I should have let it go. But something in me, a warning, an instinct, a gut-wrenching sense of dread, made my hand move before my brain could stop it. I grabbed the phone. The screen was still unlocked. And then I saw it. Madison. Guess you haven't told her yet since the angry pregnant wife hasn't shown up at my door. A chill ran down my spine. I clicked the messages. My fingers felt numb, but my heart pounded so violently I could hear it over the rain. And there it was, months of messages. Flirty, romantic, sexual, plans, secrets, lies. 4 months of my husband and my best friend betraying me while I leaned on them for support. 4 months of them laughing behind my back, whispering in the dark while I slept beside him. And then the final blow. A new message popped up right in front of me. Madison. The test results came in. The baby isn't his. I choked on my own breath. What the fuck is this? Dan's voice was sharp, furious. I turned to him, my hands trembling, my throat dry. Dan, what is she talking about? What test? His jaw tightened, his grip on the wheel turning his knuckles white. You tell me, Emily, he spat. Who the hell have you been sleeping with? For a second, I thought I misheard him. Me? He was the one cheating. He was the liar. And now he was accusing me? This is insane, I whispered. You know this baby is yours, but he wasn't listening. His breath was ragged, his body shaking with rage, paranoia, something ugly and dangerous. I should have known, he muttered. I should have fucking known. And then, suddenly, the car screeched to a stop. My body jerked forward, my seatbelt digging into my ribs as the tires skidded against the wet pavement. The kids stirred in the back seat, one of them letting out a sleepy whimper. Dan, I gasped. What the hell? Get out! His voice was low, lethal, final. My ears rang. The words didn't make sense. My brain refused to process them. Dan, it's raining, the kids. I said, get the fuck out, he roared, slamming his fist against the dashboard so hard I flinched. My stomach clenched, my arms instinctively wrapped around my belly. He wouldn't, would he? Before I could even respond, he unbuckled his seatbelt, threw open his door, and stormed around to my side of the car. I barely had time to react before he yanked my door open, grabbed my arm, and dragged me out onto the pavement. Dan, stop! I shrieked, stumbling as the cold rain soaked through my clothes, my feet slipping against the wet ground. One of the kids started crying, but Dan didn't care. He reached into the trunk, grabbed my suitcase, and tossed it onto the side of the road like it was garbage. I could barely breathe. Dan, please, but he was already back in the car, slamming the door shut, shifting into drive. Dan, you can't just... The car peeled away. I froze. He left. He actually left. The taillights disappeared into the night, swallowed by the storm. And just like that, my husband was gone. I stood there, rain streaming down my face, my heart hammering against my ribs. I was stranded, pregnant, alone, 2 crying children clinging to me, shaking in the cold. And the only person I could have called for help, she was in bed with my husband. I should have fallen apart. I should have collapsed right there on the pavement, sobbing, broken, defeated. But I didn't. because something inside me, something stronger, something primal, something I didn't know existed until that moment, snapped. I wiped the rain from my face. I squared my shoulders. I gritted my teeth so hard my jaw ached. I wasn't going to break. Not for him, not for her, not for anyone. Because if Dan thought for 1 second that he could toss me aside like nothing, if he thought I was just going to stand here and take it, he was dead fucking wrong. The moment he slammed on the brakes, I knew something was wrong. The tires screeched against the wet pavement, the sudden force jerking my body forward, my seatbelt cutting into my chest. My babies stirred in the back seat, their soft, sleepy murmurs turning into whimpers. The rain hammered against the windshield, the wipers slicing across the glass in a frantic rhythm. Dan, I gasped, my pulse thundering in my ears. What the hell are you doing? He didn't answer. His grip on the steering wheel was so tight his knuckles had gone white. His whole body coiled like a wire about to snap. His breathing was harsh, erratic. And then he turned to me. Not the way he used to, not with warmth or familiarity, not with the kind of love that had once made me feel like I belonged to something safe. No, this was different. His eyes were dark, hollow, filled with disgust, with hatred, like I was nothing, like I was someone he regretted ever knowing. "Get out," he said. I blinked. Rainwater pelted the windshield, blurring the outside world into a mess of streaks and shadows. "What?" My voice came out weak, barely above a whisper. His jaw clenched, his breathing turned shallow, and then, with the slowest, deadliest enunciation I'd ever heard, he repeated, "Get the fuck out." I stared at him, waiting, praying for some sign that this was a joke, a cruel, horrible joke. But he wasn't joking. "Dan, it's pouring," I tried, my voice rising, a hysteria creeping into my words. "The kids? I don't give a fuck," he spat. "Get out. You and your bastard baby. I'm done with this." His words were a slap to the face. Bastard baby? A sickening realization hit me all at once. He believed it. He actually believed Maddie's lie about the baby not being his. I felt my stomach drop, my vision blur. Dan, listen to me. But he was already ripping off his seatbelt, shoving the door open. Cold air and rain rushed into the car, and before I could process it, he was outside, rounding the hood, coming for me. I barely had time to react before my door was yanked open. The wind howled. The rain sliced against my skin like tiny daggers, and then he grabbed me. "Dan, stop!" I screamed, clawing at his arms, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might explode. "You're scaring the kids." But he didn't care. He yanked me out of the car like I weighed nothing, my sneakers skidding against the wet asphalt. My stomach lurched, fear coiling in my throat. Behind me, my son's voice cracked with panic. "Mommy?" I twisted, trying to grab the door, trying to reach for them. But Dan was faster. He slammed the door shut, the sound like a gunshot in the night. I pounded on the window. "Dan, don't do this!" He didn't even look at me. He stalked to the back, ripped the trunk open, and grabbed my suitcase. And then he threw it onto the ground, right into a puddle. I froze. My entire body went ice cold. "You son of a bitch," I breathed, my voice shaking with something beyond rage, beyond devastation. But he wasn't finished. He opened the back door, and that was when my blood truly turned to ice. "No!" I screamed, lunging forward, but he shoved me back with his arm, knocking the breath from my lungs. He reached inside, unbuckled our 5-year-old son, and pulled him out. "Dan, stop," my voice shattered, but my baby was already out in the storm, his tiny face twisted with terror, his little arms reaching for me. "Mommy!" I ran to him, gathering him into my arms, my body a shield against the rain. His little body trembled against my chest, his sobs ripping through me like razor blades, and then I heard my daughter scream. Dan was unbuckling her next. I dropped to my knees, my hands clasped together. "Dan, please," my voice cracked. "They're scared. Don't do this, please." His eyes were empty. "You should have thought of that," he said coldly. Then he picked up our 3-year-old daughter and dumped her into my arms. She wailed, clinging to my neck, her little fingers digging into my wet skin. I tried to stand, tried to plead, tried to find the man I had once married somewhere inside this stranger in front of me, but there was nothing left of him, only this monster. He slammed the back door shut, got back into the driver's seat, and without another word, he drove away. I watched, helpless, breathless, shaking, as the taillights disappeared into the rain. Gone. He was gone, and I was alone. The wind howled around me, the rain seeped through my clothes, chilling me to the bone. My babies sobbed against me, their tiny bodies shivering. My mind spun violently, struggling to grasp what had just happened. How? How did we get here? How did I go from having a husband, a family, a future, to this? To standing on the side of a road, pregnant, abandoned, clutching my terrified children with nowhere to go. I should have fallen apart. I should have collapsed, let the rain wash away the wreckage of my life, let the weight of it all drown me. But something inside me, something primal, something fierce, something I had never known existed, snapped. I tightened my arms around my babies, my heartbeat steadying, my breath slowing. I wasn't going to break. Not now, not for him, not for her. Dan thought he could throw me away like garbage. He thought I'd crumble, that I'd be too broken, too lost, too weak to fight back. He was wrong. Dead fucking wrong. I should have been broken. I should have sat there soaked and shivering, letting the weight of it all drown me, letting the betrayal, the humiliation, the sheer fucking cruelty of it crush me into the ground. But I didn't. Because rage is a hell of a drug. And as I stood on the side of that godforsaken road, clutching my babies in the pouring rain, something inside me shifted, snapped. Dan thought he had won. He thought he could strip me down to nothing, leave me stranded like discarded trash, and walk away without consequences. He thought wrong, because if there's one thing I've learned about betrayal, the only thing more powerful than heartbreak is vengeance. And I was about to show him exactly what that looked like. I had two priorities: get my kids to safety and get my hands on everything Dan thought he controlled. I grabbed my phone, soaked, barely working, and called the one person who I knew would come, no questions asked. Nathan, my older brother, the only family I had left. He picked up on the second ring. Em? His voice was groggy, probably asleep, but the second he heard my shaking breath, his tone What happened? Dan left us, I said, my voice raw, on the side of the highway in the rain. Silence, then a single deadly exhale. Send me your location. 10 minutes later, his truck pulled up, headlights piercing through the storm. He barely had time to throw it into park before he was out, running toward us, yanking off his hoodie to wrap around my son's shivering frame. What the fuck happened? His voice was a growl, barely contained fury. I looked at him, my hands gripping my children like a lifeline, my body still vibrating with cold and rage. Get us out of here first, I murmured. Then I'll tell you everything. I sat on Nathan's couch, a cup of tea clutched between my freezing fingers, my babies curled up asleep beside me. Nathan stood across from me, arms crossed, expression hard as stone. You're telling me, he said slowly, that Dan, your husband, not only has been screwing your best friend for months, but that he also threw you and the kids onto the side of the road over some fake paternity test bullshit? I nodded, my throat tight. Nathan's jaw flexed, his fists curling. I will kill him, I almost smiled. You'll have to get in line. His anger burned hot, but mine was ice cold. Dan thought he held all the cards. He thought I was helpless, dependent, that leaving me stranded meant leaving me powerless. He had no idea I was about to strip him of everything. First things first, I said, setting my cup down. I need to shut him out financially before he drains our accounts. Nathan pulled out his laptop. Tell me what you need. I logged into our bank accounts, my fingers flying over the keyboard. Dan and I had a joint account. His paycheck went in, all bills came out. But what he didn't know was that I had my own separate account, one he never paid attention to. And I'd been preparing for this moment long before I even realized it was coming. One by one, I transferred out everything that was legally mine. Half of our savings, every dollar from my personal account, even the emergency fund I'd built in secret for years. By the time I was done, Dan was left with exactly 62 cents. Nathan let out a low whistle. Damn, you really weren't playing around. I leaned back, exhaling slow, feeling the smallest hint of satisfaction creep through the cracks of my fury. That's just the beginning. Dan's power wasn't just in our finances. It was in his reputation, his perfect facade. He was a man who needed people to see him as the golden husband, the hard-working provider, the family man. And I was about to set that image on fire. I started with our families. A mass text, short, direct, and laced with just enough venom. Emily, just so everyone is aware, Dan left me and the kids on the side of the highway tonight, in the rain. He has also been having an affair with Madison for 4 months. If you'd like to hear his side of the story, feel free to ask him, but I'd start by asking why his bank account is empty first. The responses were instant. Dan's mother called within seconds, voice frantic. His sister replied with WTF. His father, the man who had always favored him, simply sent one word: unbelievable. And then I went public: Facebook, Instagram, every platform where Dan and Madison had curated their lies. A single post. I didn't think I'd ever have to write something like this, but here we are. After 6 years of marriage, Dan decided to leave me and our children stranded on the side of the highway in a storm so he could go back to my best friend. For anyone who thinks they know him, I promise you don't. And just like that, his mask shattered. Dan was a predictable bastard. I knew exactly how he'd react when he realized his money was gone, his reputation was on fire, and his secrets were out in the open. He'd come crawling, not with apologies. No, Dan wasn't capable of remorse, but with rage. And when he did, I'd be ready. I set my phone on the table, hit record, and waited. Right on cue, less than 2 hours later, my phone exploded with calls. Then the texts. Dan, what the fuck did you do? Dan, you stole my money? Dan, you are insane. Call me back now. I didn't respond. I waited, and then the final text came. Dan, you think you won? You're gonna regret this, Emily. I swear to God you are going to pay. I smiled. Because that was exactly what I needed. A threat. In writing, from a man who had already abandoned his wife and children. A threat that I could use in court. A threat that ensured he wouldn't just lose his money or his reputation, but his children, too. I locked my phone, my pulse steady, my mind clear. Dan thought he had control. He thought I'd roll over, that I'd sob and beg, that I'd let him walk away unscathed. But what he didn't realize? He didn't leave me with nothing. He left me with rage, with proof, with leverage, and I was about to take him for everything he had left. Some people like to believe in karma, that the universe has a way of balancing things, that the wicked always pay for their sins. I don't, because karma takes too long, and I wasn't going to sit around waiting for the universe to punish Dan. No, I was going to do it myself. Dan had always thought he was untouchable, that his charm, his calculated lies, his ability to twist a narrative would save him every time. But this time, I held all the cards. The first strike hit Monday morning, just as he walked into work. A small, neatly wrapped package had been delivered to his boss's desk. Anonymously, of course. Inside, screenshots of his texts with Madison, hotel receipts from their secret meetups, financial statements showing his sketchy money transfers. Dan was supposed to be a senior account manager at a firm that prided itself on ethics and professionalism, which meant that when his boss saw that he'd been embezzling company funds, money he had wired straight into Madison's account, there was only one way this was going to go. By 10 a.m., he was fired on the spot. By noon, he was escorted out of the building, and by 12:30, I got the call, or more accurately, the voicemail. Dan, you think you're fucking smart, Emily? Dan, you think ruining my job is gonna make you feel better? Dan, you just made a big mistake. Big fucking mistake. I smiled, because he still didn't get it. This wasn't about feeling better. This was about making sure he felt everything I had felt 10 times worse. And I wasn't done yet. Madison always played the victim. She had that face, the kind that made people want to rescue her, that soft, helpless, I didn't mean for this to happen kind of expression. It was bullshit, and I was about to rip the mask off her face. Her employer was a small but high-end PR firm. Reputation was everything in her field, so I made sure they got a front row seat to the scandal of the year. A beautifully curated email sent straight to her CEO, HR, and every major client she worked with. Attached, screenshots of her bragging about sleeping with Dan, laughing about how Emily is too stupid to figure it out, included the fact that she had funneled money from my husband's corporate card into her personal account. Bonus detail that she had been using company resources to book her little getaways with Dan. I waited, and right on cue, the fallout hit like a wrecking ball. By the end of the day, Madison had been fired too. Her reputation destroyed, her career over, and the best part, I had sent the email from Dan's account, so when Madison called me screaming through the phone, accusing me of ruining her life, I just laughed. "Oh, sweetie," I said. "You did that all by yourself." Then I hung up. By the time Dan got home to the apartment he thought he still owned, he was met with a wonderful surprise. His key didn't work because while he had been scrambling to save his job, I had been at the courthouse, filing for full custody. filing for a restraining order, filing for an emergency motion to freeze all joint assets. And since his name was never actually on the lease, the apartment had always been in my name. His shit was already packed and waiting for him in garbage bags outside the door. I watched through the peephole as he tried to process it, as anger morphed into confusion, as confusion turned to desperation. And then his voice, low, dangerous. Dan, Emily, open the fucking door. I didn't. I swear to God, you're gonna regret this. I smiled because, funny enough, I didn't regret a thing. Dan wasn't smart. He was predictable, and I knew exactly what he was going to do next. When a man like Dan loses everything, he doesn't take accountability. He blames. He lashes out. He gets reckless. And reckless men make mistakes. So when he showed up drunk, furious, and pounding on Nathan's front door at midnight, I was ready. I let him yell, let him rage, let him scream about how I had ruined his life, how I was a vindictive bitch, how he was going to take the kids, take my money, take everything I had left. I let him dig his own grave. Because what he didn't know was that Nathan was recording the whole thing. Every slurred threat, every violent drunken slur, every promise to make me pay, and that recording went straight to my lawyer. The court hearing was short and brutal. Dan sat there, pale, exhausted, a shell of the man he used to be, while my lawyer played his own words against him. The evidence of abandoning his children, the financial fraud, the recorded threats. By the time the judge ruled full custody in my favor, Dan didn't even fight it. He just sat there, staring at the table, like he couldn't believe this was happening to him. Like he still didn't understand how I had beaten him so thoroughly. And when it was finally over, when I walked past him free, victorious, he looked up at me, and in the smallest, weakest voice I had ever heard from him, he whispered, "Was it worth it?" I stopped, turned to him, looked him dead in the eyes, and smiled every damn second. Then I walked away, and I never looked back. They say success is the best revenge. They say karma always catches up. I used to wonder if that was true. Now, I don't wonder anymore, because as I stand here, stronger, happier, more successful than I ever was, I know revenge isn't about making them suffer. It's about winning in a way they never could, and that's exactly what I did. The day I walked into the courthouse for the last time, I expected Dan to look angry, to be filled with the same arrogance he had always carried, the belief that somehow he could still win. But when he turned to me, his eyes weren't filled with anger. They were filled with regret. Regret because he finally understood. He had lost everything. His job gone, his reputation destroyed, his support system non-existent. And his family? He threw us away the moment he chose Madison over me. Now he was paying the price. The judge's voice rang through the courtroom. "Judge, the court grants full custody to Emily Carter. All child support obligations will be enforced." Divorce finalized. Dan's jaw clenched because for the first time in his life, he couldn't charm, manipulate, or lie his way out of it. Justice had finally caught up to him. I stood up, ready to walk out, ready to leave him behind forever. But then I heard it. "Dan, Emily, wait." I turned slowly, meeting his desperate eyes. "Dan, please just give me one more chance. I can change." I let his words hang in the air, the weight of them meaningless now. Then I smiled. I lifted my coffee cup, taking a slow sip. "Me. You know what, Dan?" His face flickered with hope, just for a second, until I crushed it. "Me. The only regret I have is not leaving you sooner." And with that, I walked out, without looking back. I didn't have to ruin Dan's life. He did that all on his own. After losing in court, he bounced between dirty motels, unable to afford rent. His credit cards were maxed out, his bank accounts empty. His car was repossessed. And Madison? She left the city to escape the humiliation. No one wanted to be associated with her. She lost her job, her reputation, and any chance of rebuilding what she ruined. They thought they were unstoppable together. Turns out they were just a sinking ship dragging each other down. Karma doesn't forget. But my story wasn't about Dan's downfall. It was about my rise. I didn't just survive, I thrived. I took the money I saved, the skills I had, and built a marketing agency from the ground up. At first it was small, a few clients, late nights, endless hours of hard work. But soon it grew. Within a year, I had a thriving business, a beautiful home, and a future that was entirely my own. And then I met Ryan. He wasn't like Dan. There were no empty promises, no manipulation, no lies. Ryan was kind, patient, steady. He didn't try to control me. He simply stood beside me, supporting me, believing in me. For the first time in my life, I was with someone who lifted me up instead of tearing me down. Someone who held my hand, not my mistakes, over my head. I had finally found what I deserved all along: real love, real respect, real happiness. Months later, I ran into Dan by accident. It was in a coffee shop, of all places. I had just finished a client meeting, feeling confident, successful, and happy. And then I saw him. He looked different, weaker, smaller, older. The weight of his own choices had aged him. Dan, Emily, you look great. I just smiled. Because I already knew that. I was happier than I had ever been, loved, successful, at peace, and he was alone, broke, forgotten. Do you think maybe someday we could... I didn't even let him finish. Me. No, Dan, we couldn't. And just like that, I walked away. I didn't need revenge. I had already won. Some people think revenge is about making your enemies suffer. It's not. Revenge is about rising so high above them that their existence becomes irrelevant. It's about building a life so incredible, so fulfilling that your past doesn't even deserve a thought. And I did exactly that. Dan and Madison were just footnotes in my story now. My real story? It was just beginning. What do you think? Was Dan always destined to fall, or do you believe that some men like him can change? Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts.